don't believe it. Don't listen to him. He's lying. Oh, yeah? Well, explain this.
Don't you just love it? Don't just love it when a year of research into why video games have become woke propaganda machines has finally paid off, and we can no longer be called conspiracy theorists anymore? Well, it seems the Trump administration has just showed where USAID had been funding American taxpayer dollars into different administrations, media corporations, and even, drumroll please, video game consultancy firms. Shocking, isn't it?
I am shocked. Shocked! Well, not that shocked.
But to many who have been asleep or been on the fence on things. I've already done the research already in my previous videos about GAMERGATE, video game consultancies like Sweet Baby Inc., Feminist Frequency, and Women in Games, and so on. So I'll post the links in the description if you want to get into the meat and potatoes on things. But this is a WILKSY roundup, so I have to keep this short. I want to show you the receipts, and we go down memory lane, where it all began. Now we know that DI initiatives in America are about to die and never be brought back from the grave again. Hi, I'm Mugs15, and let's dive into this stupidity. And if you haven't subscribed, do it now, and let's build a kingdom.
Assemble the army.
So to start off, who is Politico, and why are they on the docket on so many contracts on usspending.gov? According to their website, Politico is a global authority on the intersection of politics, policy, and power. It is the most robust news operation and information in the world, specializing in politics and policy, which informs the most influential audience in the world with insight, edge, and authority. Founded in 2007, Politico has grown to a team of more than 1,100 working across North America and Europe. In October 2021, Politico acquired by and is a subsidiary of Axel Springer SE. Politico's vision. Politico strives to be the dominant source for news on politics and policy in power centers across every continent, where access to reliable information, non-partisan journalism, and real-time tools create, inform, and engage a global citizenry. After seeing the evidence, well, that's all a load of bollocks. You were funded by the dirty nanny state to put out narratives they wanted to put out. But it doesn't stop there. Remember, they lied about GAMERGATE being an online harassment campaign, misogynist campaign, and so on. Video games were never really the exclusive prominence of white male loners, but that's been the stereotype, and some players took that reputation seriously, so much so they organised a backlash to try to protect it. 6 years ago, a disinformation campaign with the profoundly stupid name of GAMERGATE spent several months orchestrating a series of harassment campaigns of women game developers and critics. Several women fled their homes in fear for their safety. The harassers' motivation? To drive people they dubbed social justice warriors for their progressive values and their desire to see more realistic deceptions of women and minorities in video games out of the industry. The campaign worked well enough that Steve Bannon has reported in Joshua Green's Devil's Bargain used it as a template for Trump's presidential campaign. So you would think that the right would embrace that, and for a while when Taylor was more quiet about her politics, they had the notion that she was secretly one of them. You saw this in around 2017 to 2018. So it all makes sense when you're funded by the dirty nanny state to push a narrative and control the media. If you control the media, you control the culture and the world itself. But just to show we're not lying, this is a press secretary calls out Politico to their very faces.
USAID has gotten a lot of attention the last couple of days with some of these bizarre things that we've been, taxpayers have been funding. Now it looks like there are a couple media outlets that have been dragged into this conversation as far as USAID funding as well. Does the President have any comment on that?
So upon
coming out here to the briefing room, I was made aware of the funding from USAID to media outlets, including Politico, who I know has a seat in this room. And I can confirm that the more than $8 million taxpayer dollars that have gone to essentially subsidizing subscriptions to Politico on the American taxpayers' dime will no longer be happening. The DOJ team is working on canceling those payments now. Again, this is a whole of government effort to ensure that we are going line by line when it comes to the federal government's books. And this president and his team are making decisions across the board on, do these receipts serve the interests of the American people? Is this a good use of the American taxpayers' money? If it is not, that funding will no longer be sent abroad, and American taxpayers will see significant savings because of that effort.
You are done. Fired.
$8 million of taxpayer dollars was used to push the false narrative of GAMERGATE, Who would have known? But it doesn't stop there. According to that Park Place article, and I can confirm, yes, this is on the USA spending website, I have done the research. Politico's history of pushing anti-gamer narratives for years. Politico has aligned itself with activist gaming journalists who push woke narratives under the guise of combating toxicity. Their extensive coverage of Gamergate framed gamers as reactionary extremists rather than addressing their legitimate concerns about media corruption that sparked the controversy in the first place. Mainstream media's government subsidised runs deep. Politico isn't alone in taking taxpayer money. According to usaspending.gov, other media outlets were receiving government funds include the Associated Press, $619,968, Reuters, $3.1 million, the New York Times, $378,266. These revelations come at the time when Musk and the Trump administration are aggressively slashing wasteful federal spendings. Leavitt made it clear that taxpayer money should not be funding media outlets that sever political interests rather than the public good. So if you wonder why places like Kotaku, PC Gamer have been out of business for a long time, well, there's your answer. It was all funded by taxpayer money. But it doesn't stop there, especially where I live in the UK, England, because it seems the British Broadcast Association, aka the PDF oil company, have been funded by the American taxpayer too. And to hit this point home, remember back in 2014 when they put out these news stories?
Zoe Quinn was forced to leave her home after she received death threats because she'd found herself at the centre of a debate about claims of corrupt relations between some games developers and journalists. Well, a little bit more about this story, first of all, from our technology reporter, Dave Lee.
And developer Zoe Quinn has been at the centre of it all. Zoe's former boyfriend posted a 9,000-word blog sharing intimate details of Zoe's private life, including a relationship she had with a games journalist. Some said this was evidence of how games journalism was corrupt and that journalists were too close to the people they were writing about.
A few people would argue that the net result of some of that is actually that gaming journalism ethics are being looked at in the way they never have done before. I mean, has there been any value to this at all in your eyes?
No. All of the ethics concerns that they've raised are incredibly directed at people with the least power in the industry. Nobody's talking about the relationships between major publishers and press. Any of the real concerns that people should have about ethics in journalism have been completely ignored.
The whole row has become known as Gamergate, and it shows no sign of easing off. Zoe says it's time for major companies to now step in.
The thing to take away from this for people that are maybe not as involved in the games industry as I am is that there's like a massive disparity still between females who work in the games industry. That number is around 8% in the UK, so it's massively a male-orientated industry. And the amount of female players that are out there these days, it's pretty much 50-50, that's what the research says. So there's still a long way for the industry to go, and unfortunately events like this make it more and more difficult, I think, for women to want to get into the industry if they think they're going to face this abuse.
I mean, and that is an extraordinary statistic. 8% roughly within the industry are female. And are you talking about across the board, or are you just talking about the people who actually develop the games and write the codes? I mean, why is that figure so low?
Well, I think it's a kind of a chicken and egg scenario, really. You know, traditionally the video game market did skew towards the male audience, and a lot of those games out there, Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto, certainly appeal to a male audience. But in the last few years, a massive audience has grown out of tablet and mobile games, games that are available to be played on many different devices, and I think that's brought more of the female audience on board. Really, as an industry, we need to bring more female game makers and visionaries, but also people that are working in the business in general, to kind of broaden the games that are being made for that female audience. And really, this is the GAMERGATE scenario is the worst possible thing, because women who come into the industry think that they're going to be targeted. And in fact, it's not really just women, it's anyone that identifies themselves as a feminist. And it's a really bad situation. A lot of people are attacking these women, and they're feeling as though that they're not able to give speeches and go and leave their homes. It's becoming very, very serious.
Attention the next 20 minutes or so to #GamerGate. It's quite complex, so we are joined by Mike Diver, who's a video games editor at Vice in Brighton, to give us a 1-minute guide to this. Now, we're going to be talking about whether you, whether people feel that the games industry has a problem with women. This comes out of the whole #GamerGate fiasco, but for people who haven't followed it on social media, just give us a kind of 1-minute guide, if you would.
I'll try and be as succinct as I can, I suppose, because it's quite a complicated issue, and I suppose it's been brewing for much longer than the last couple of months. But back in the summer, a developer by the name of Zoe Quinn had some terrible things written about her online by an ex-boyfriend, which exploded out of all control and led to a discussion about whether people were fraternizing inappropriately with members of the press in order to garner positive coverage for their games. A lot of it was ultimately disproven. And there was a further ethical conversation that kind of went with that about whether or not the games press is too deeply in the pocket of games publishers, games PRs, etc., in order to put positive spins on their products effectively. What we've seen in the last few weeks, though, is a great surge in what is basically hatred, anti-feminist, misogynistic hatred directed towards female members of the games industry, such as Brianna Wu, who was on 5 Live this morning, such as Anita Sarkeesian, who founded Feminist Frequency in the US a couple of years ago, and of course back to Quinn and many other people.
All of this controversy was the catalyst into manufacturing people into becoming feminists and busybody Karens in the video game industry. When the truth was out of the corruption, they tried to hide it, and they tried to make even more people become just like them, all in the name of making the video game industry more inclusive to women and minorities, even though it already was. Just people who just didn't like men having fun. So instead of telling people the rotten corruption that was going on with developers and publishers, and even them going to bed with each other, no, this was used as a weapon to say gamers hated women. So is it a coincidence the PDF-IO company and video game journalists were in cahoots with shaming gamers and people who called out Thelma and Louise on their grift and bullshit, along with other video game journalists and video game developers who sold their soul to government grants? This reminds me of Dustborn, that literally was an Antifa disinformation simulator that was funded by the Norwegian government, and even game journalists tried to defend and shame gamers for calling out the grift. And did it work? Well, nobody bought it, and that video game developer, Ragnar Tungist, even showed his true colours of how racist he was, and a disgrace to his own country, and a disgrace to every male species on the planet. Now that it's all in the open, thanks to the Trump administration cutting them out of their funding, we no longer have to dig for gold nuggets. We just now have to dig for dirt. It's now accessible to anyone. This is a major win, and also the beginning of the end for them. Where they're going to get their money now? I mean, it's even a miracle these video game journalist companies and some video game studios are still around. But now, we all know. We can't be shamed or cancelled anymore. And what did the PDF file companies say about this? A free press is essential to freedom and democracy. And 75% of countries around the world do not have free press. BBC Media Action supports local media around the world to deliver trusted information to people most in need.
Pardon me, but that's bullshit.
Like, many international development organisations, BBC Media Action has been affected by a temporary pause in US government funding, which amounts to about 8% of our income in 2023 to 2024. We're doing everything we can to minimise the impact on our partners and people we serve. As the BBC's international charity, we are completely separate from BBC News and wholly reliant on our donors and supporters to carry out our work. Well, that was all corporate jargon for saying we can't speak on this matter or we'll get into trouble.
I prefer really not to speak. If I speak, I am in big trouble. In big trouble. And I don't want to be in big trouble.
This is where my taxpayers' money goes as well. And to finish off with some comedy, do you remember that pathetic Law and Order Gamergate episode with so much cringe and where they had Logan Paul as a villain and his ISIS thugs?
Game on, NYPD.
Where's that coming from?
Next Wednesday, ripped from the headlines.
This is a game to them.
What's the next level?
A violent video game inspires a real crime.
Prepare to be slaughtered.
New SVU, next Wednesday.
Go home, gamer girl.
What the hell is your problem?
You and your boss. Reina Punjabi only got this feminazi game made by being a slut.
What happened?
These guys, they just can't stand women in gaming.
What did they do to you?
They leveled up. There were two of them. They were just like total FALs.
Failures in life.
They were white.
These guys.
Gary and Zach are sacrificial lambs crucified on the altar of political correctness.
There'd be no game if Miss Punjabi hadn't banged the money man.
Steven and I are getting married.
So you'd agree that the criticisms of your work are rooted in misogyny? Reina, is it okay?
Let's go! What do these guys do? They troll behind their computers and make prank calls.
Sub threat on Red Channel.
And if she and her social justice warriors don't leave gaming now, we will make them.
The good of one is the good of all. Hunt, build, forage, create. They say that history repeats itself, but now it's up to you to get it right. Find the Amazonian warrior in you.
Game on, NYPD.
Oh yes, here we go.
You camping back there? No. Bad form, but effective.
Women in gaming. What did I expect? You didn't deserve this. Whatever. I'm out. You said if you gave up, they'd win. They already did.
What the hell is even that?
Yeah, that really was something. And whoever was the writer for the episode really needs to get off the internet at that time. Unless it was funded by the government too. But who knows. USAID is less than 1% of the federal budget, so I am interested in what else they are hiding. But time will tell. So where are all the video game journalists covering this, or even screaming to the heavens that they're being oppressed? Nope, nowhere to be found at all. For now. I mean, they had it coming anyway. It's always been Orange Man bad, and anyone who disagrees or shows the truth is a right-wing extremist. So they say. Yeah, you reap what you sow. And let's not forget the current Blizzard controversy. When Trump said that he would get rid of DEI, this is a response from a Blizzard Activision employee. Team, given the headlines around diversity, equity and inclusion programs in the workplace, it's no surprise that questions have come up with what the future looks like at Activision and whether our focus and priorities around DEI shift. To be clear, this work continues to be extremely important in everything that we do. It's important to our games, our culture, and who we are as a company. Our inclusive growth team has made great strides in helping us weave inclusivity in all aspects of business. Our strategy remains focused on enhancing the experiences of all employees, providing exceptional experiences to players globally, and providing accessible opportunities to those interacting with our company and brand. I look forward to all the great work we'll continue to do together. Rob. which are all panicking until we get this. Yeah, very inclusive indeed. So after 2 weeks, have these employees been fired and maybe even arrested for death threats? Nope, these people are still there, and you wonder why I want nothing to do with Blizzard Activision for years, as the developers and even the people of the WoW community support this. It's like I said, it's rules for thee, but not for me. Progressivism in a nutshell. So in conclusion, DEI is dying. The journalists are silent and scrambling on what narrative to pull next. The normies now know and they are pissed. And gamers who have standards and showed the world what had been happening for years can now enjoy the fruits of their labour. Who would have thought gamers were the protagonist in their own game for 10 whole years? But what do you think? Are you angry to find out all about this? Do you think this is going to be a big change for the video game industry? Or do you totally disagree? The choice is yours. This is WILKSY15, signing out.
Why, oh, why do we pay taxes? I mean, just to have bloody parking restrictions and buggery ugly traffic wardens and bollocky pedestrian bloody crossings, you know? And those bastard railings outside shops so you can't even get in them! I mean, I know they're there to stop stupid people running into the street and killing themselves, but we're not all stupid! We don't all need nursemaiding! I mean, why not just have a stupidity tax? Just tax the stupid people! Die! Yes!
Any more of this ridiculous rant and I'll put you both away.
Here, here.